Today is October 25th, 2023, and I want to show you this road, which is very beautiful. Look at all the fall colors. The trees right here already dropped their needles, but the ones up here still have them pretty full, and the sun on them makes them look really nice. These are called Tamarack trees, and they are the only pine tree around here that loses its needles for the winter. They're all turning yellow, dropping them all now. They look pretty. Another week they'll all be bald. They seem to like to grow in places with a lot of water, it seems. All these lowlands is pretty wet around here. It's also getting dusk. It's about 4:50 in the afternoon. It'll be dark in about a half an hour. Dusk right now is about the time a lot of animals like to come out and walk around, so we'll film for a little while, especially while we got the nice scenery. We're coming up upon more of those trees in just a moment. In 40 minutes, the hours for hunting will be done, because I actually learned that today. Apparently, you're only allowed to shoot a moose between 8 o'clock, I think it was, and 5:30 in the state of Maine during hunting season. You can't go after them in the middle of the night. And I think that law probably exists because you can blind a moose where they don't run away, and they're actually curious by your lights. They'll just pause there and not do anything. Although you're not supposed to shoot them if they're in the road. I believe the law is they have to be a certain amount from the road, and I do know there is a law you aren't even supposed to fire the gun unless you are standing 20 feet from the road and aiming away from the road. And I don't know if that law applies on roads that aren't on the map, like very rural ones that are called trails. I really don't know. I'm sure it happens out in the middle of nowhere, because nobody would notice it. But next year they are going to try again to get the moose on the endangered species list, because it is still a very rare animal. The only time you can really see one is if you travel way out here into the wilderness. When I was little, I used to be able to see them quite a few hundred miles further down south. They'd be still pretty common. I know in my area, just like 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, they took down all the signs for moose crossing because they just don't exist around there anymore. They tried years ago to make it a threatened species in the state, but I don't know how something like that even gets voted down. It was obviously voted down by the people who want to hunt them, but they're going to try again. I think anything rare shouldn't be hunted. I'm not against hunting, but they are still a very rare animal. You don't see them often. Out in the wilderness, you're lucky if you see one a day now. Just 5-10 years ago, you go out on these roads and you see dozens of them every single night. It's not too common to see a bunch of them like that anymore. All the fall colors you're seeing now, these are no longer the tamaracks. These are aspen trees, which, when they're healthy, they hold off for quite a while. All the bald trees next to us are aspen, but there's still some very pretty spots. The aspen are still in peak. Not this area, but there are areas they're still looking very pretty. I even seen some this week that are so healthy that they're still green. They haven't even converted over to their colors yet. But they'll do it next week. Next week is going to be the first burst of very cold weather heading into the first week in November. It'll be cold. Daytime highs in the 30s. Nighttime it'll get down in the 20s. It says, I bet it'll get down into the teens. It's always colder than they forecast in the wilderness, because most of the places they take the temperature are in some sort of city buildings. Everything's giving off a little bit of heat. So heat's absorbed during the day in the concrete and rooftops, and it slowly releases at night, which makes it a little bit warmer than normal. When out here you got all the tree cover, which helps it stay considerably colder. Every time I come out here in the winter, it's always much colder than they say. Every time I've gone camping, it's been a lot colder out here than they say that I've personally recorded, and that's because there's no weather stations way out here. Right now we're still at least 50 miles away from any city or anything. Quite a ways out. It's peaceful riding on these roads. Now that tourist season's over, you can literally come out here sometimes, not this time of year, but once it starts snowing, there won't be many people out here, and you can go days at a time if you're far enough out without seeing a single person. And it's amazing that you can go that long, because they're plowed roads. They're obviously using them for something, but I guess not at that time. They plan on logging certain areas later in the winter, so it's easier to just keep it plowed until then than try to plow 33 feet of snow at once. They got all the plows already hooked up. I noticed out here they use a lot of graders. They'll put a snow plow on the front of it. The grader actually helps. They can drop the blade and shave ice off the road if they need to. Especially frost heaving. They'll have to be able to shave it off with that blade. Doesn't matter if it's frozen, it'll go through it. They also have a bunch of tractor trailers, or just the tractor, with the fifth wheel removed. And they'll have like a gigantic block of concrete strapped onto it where the fifth wheel used to be to give it more traction. And they chain that up. Now they have a powerful plow truck. Not that windy today, but now that the trees are losing leaves, the wind can get through and get going a little bit better. Today I saw an aspen tree in the road. It completely blocked the road where I had driven about an hour prior, but I got out with a handsaw. I was able to get a piece out of the road big enough to get by. A tree like that, it can be brittle but elastic at the same time, so that's not something you want to try pulling out of the road because it can just snap after you wind it up. But I got a good enough part out of there. If I really had to, I could have winched a bigger part of it out, but I avoid doing that. I gotta find a way to hook the winch up in a better way than I have it. Look at that gigantic saw blade over there. This road here actually is brand new. This road's more dominant. If I was here last year, that was like an overgrown road that I'm now turning onto. At least behind me it was. We'll explore that maybe in the spring. Don't have a lot of time right now to do that. These roads, if you come out here in the middle of the night, or if I come out in the middle of the night, a lot of times when they log an area that I haven't been out here even just for a month, they make it look completely different. They can make a road that you may have never even noticed before look very dominant because they're suddenly logging it. And that's how you get lost in the middle of the night. It really throws you off. Even though a road you're supposed to be on is the main artery, a little branch off of it will look more dominant when they're actually logging it. And that's the only time I get confused out here is on those nights when I haven't been on the road in a good month or something. Because logging it makes the entire area look completely different, especially when they do it around intersections. Going on this time of year as far as finding things that are blocked despite the rain. Today we came across maybe 3 huge clogs, but they were 6 or 8 foot pipes completely underwater, which makes it too dangerous to do by hand. If if even a little bit of it was sticking out of the water, you can go in, knock down a couple feet of it at a time so the water's not blasting too much. But it's kind of pointless if the beaver's not trapped yet, because they'll have it plugged up again your progress that night if they're determined enough. And they're very determined this time of year to keep their ponds for the winter. And that's also another thing. Don't really like to touch the beaver dams this time of year if they are actually going to rely on it. We try to determine if it's a secondary pond, because a secondary pond release won't really affect them. They don't live there. The problem is when their lodge becomes opened and exposed from the water drop in the winter, it's when the predators will get them. But a lot of the logging companies seem to actually target their swamps in this time of year, right when it freezes over. They want to drop it down, because if they have that layer of ice, they can't build it back. But that means the beaver will die. Right here we got this looks really colorful on this bridge. Water levels are very elevated. You can see back there they were building it up a little bit. Doesn't seem very elevated though. Maybe the water's just running high. The sun is very bright and it's making everything look pretty right now. It does look pretty out against all the yellow trees. Decided to make this video because I know a lot of people probably haven't seen fall colors that involve the pine trees. A lot of people who aren't familiar with those trees think they're all just dead in the winter time. Because from a distance it looks like they have the same exact structure of most evergreens. The branches are all pointed in a way where they can bend and shed snow without snapping. It's got the same layout. Whether it's a fir tree or a tamarack, they kind of look the same when they're needleless. This area would have been yellow too, pretty, or a little back. Didn't see too much fall color this year as far as red. Most of the trees were orange this year. But that might be because we didn't have an early enough frost. I feel like the frost brings out the bright red colors better. A lot of the trees are triggered into turning beautiful colors by the shorter days of the year. And this year it seemed to be colorful longer than normal. We didn't have a lot of rain or wind around that window of the year, but it would have been nice if we had an earlier frost as far as the fall foliage. It would have brought out more vibrant reds if we had a light frost hit the maple trees. But on the bright side, the garden survived longer. We only had one freeze this year. We didn't even have a light frost. It was warm pretty much, then a sudden really hard freeze one night, and then now we have a very warm week, and next week is going to be extremely cold for a foreseeable future. Yeah, it got down to like 28 degrees 2 nights ago, which was a pretty big freeze right after it rained, so there was a lot of ice, but it quickly melted the next day. Last night the low was 45 or even a little higher. Tonight the low is like 50. It's unusual for this time of year. It feels like summer out, and especially this year it feels like summer. The average high this summer was in the 60s. I think the average high this far north is like 72 or something like that. I'm just guessing that because my area, a couple hours south, the average is 76 on the normal year, and our average was in the 60s this year, which is a big relief from last year. The average was 91, and when you have an average year of 76 on average, and then you suddenly have a year of 91, it killed a lot of things, especially with the drought. The heat wouldn't have really mattered. It was combined with no rain. But this year, it was cold and rainy almost every single day, which was nice. I think we only hit 80 degrees a handful of times. You see off to the right, they leave a couple big trees standing in the hopes of them dropping seeds so they don't have to replant that area. That's one method of doing it. Although everything I see growing is not even that type of tree. In the spring, I want to explore some of these roads in great detail. I didn't have much time on this trip. I'm only up here for like 2 nights. Sometime in the spring, I want to focus on an area and drive up every single little back road where there might be interesting things. Who knows what could be up some of these roads. They're all recently opened from logging in the area. Recently, I was able to improve my gas mileage by a couple even on these roads. I'm getting better than the factory says I'm supposed to on the highway somehow. I think it's just driving very gently. And I also took a lot of drag off the car. For a while I had the spare tire strapped onto the roof because I can't keep it underneath the truck anymore. I chose a bigger gas tank which occupied the spare tire compartment. So I now have it set up like a Jeep. Oh my gosh, I hope that's on camera. There's a giant moose that just walked off the road. Oh, look. Big moose. Like, I better get out of here. We still have another 25 minutes of hunting hours. I think he's good though, for tonight at least. I have a big straightaway in front of me and in back of me. He's not afraid of the horn. I see his tracks right here. Yeah, that guy needs some natural fear of humans. He's way too comfortable here. I shifted into drive with the door still cracked. Car didn't like that. That moose was too curious to run away, but if someone was to legally go after the moose, they would have had to step 20 feet off the road like that, and that guy would have been gone. But maybe not gone fast enough. That guy was a little too curious, but I left my door open in case the guy started to come towards me again. Or I think that was a girl, but I think their antlers are all gone, so it's kind of hard to tell this time of year. I think they might not be gone completely yet. I don't know. I've never actually had a moose show any type of aggression unless it had a baby and it didn't just run after me or anything like that. I know they do. I see videos like that all the time on YouTube. But the only time one ever showed any like aggression towards me when I wasn't in the car was when I was a kid, maybe 10 or 12, riding my bicycle on these roads alone. I saw a moose in a swamp with a baby, and the moose gave a warning but never approached any closer. It gave a warning. It puts its head low to the ground and it will scrape its front legs against the ground as a threat to get out of there. Yep. And then it just went right back to eating after I stepped back from it. And there's only actually, amazingly, all the dozens of encounters we've had over the years, only one of them actually ever showed aggression towards the vehicle. And I don't even think it was. I think it was more curiosity. If you ever seen that video, it was running away from me in the road, and then it suddenly decided to turn around and walk towards me for a second, then it turned around again and ran, probably because it knew it couldn't take on the vehicle. But I've seen ones literally run over someone's car. Today I've been just enjoying the ride out here a bunch. That's probably why I have much better gas mileage than normal. Haven't been even going the speed limits. Most of these roads have a speed limit of 45. I've been just moving around at like 25 or 30 all day. Just more enjoying the scenery than anything else. Because I'm not, usually I put a lot of miles on out here actually looking to film things, but I know there's really not that much going on this time of year. So just taking a look at it in the warm weather before everything starts freezing over. This whole area will be frozen next week. At least at night, it'll get down cold every night. It might permanently freeze the surface of the ground. Tons of road work going on, trying to get the roads in good shape before winter, because they won't be able to really do anything. Up here the ground can freeze up to 4 feet down. That's why frost heaving is so bad. It can even lift things out of the ground like poles and things if it's the right spot. Things can only get heaved out of the ground if the water table is up in that 3 or 4 foot area. If it's a well-drained area, frost heaving won't do anything. But these roads, you see how they're all wet? They become a lumpy, bumpy mess when the ground or the water in the road expands unevenly. And the grader will come by and scrape off the bumps when they're frozen. A lot of those bumps would go back to normal if they were left, but then they just fill the holes in when they sink back down, and that becomes another hazard. In the spring, frost heaves are a hazard because the surface of the road is dry, but the melting ice in the road is, you can sink into it. You wouldn't even know it was there. I did that one time, stuck for 18 hours in the road. I couldn't get myself out. And digging was pointless because it just made it worse. It's like quicksand. I just tried to make a trench to get the water away from the tailpipe. Had to leave the vehicle running for the 18 hours because I knew the mud would just flow into the tailpipe and harden, and I wouldn't have started back up in that situation. But amazingly, when you're at idle, you don't use much fuel at all. 18 hours, didn't even use a quarter of a tank. And I usually carry multiple extra tanks. Yeah, we're not going to see much more of those Tamarack trees. This area is not swampy, it's about to end. So I'll probably end the video here. And it's also getting dark. Maybe we'll do a moose watching video later on. Hope today's video was interesting, everyone. Thanks for watching and have a great day.